Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Dawson. Welcome to Leader Talk. This show is proudly brought to you by Brainiact. Each week we are meeting with incredible leaders from around the world to discuss all things leadership and business insights. Each person coming on this talk show has given up their valuable time for one very clear purpose: to give back to small and medium business owners. Now, all business owners want to build a high-performing team and a winning culture, but sometimes this is easier said than done. Today, my co-host, CEO of Peerlight Gus Arianto, and I are fortunate to chat to our guest speaker, Damien Sheehan, Country Head of IWG Australia and Sales Vice President Australia New Zealand. Damien is an energetic and results-focused leader with broad international experience. Damien is here today to share his secret recipe for building a performing team and creating a winning culture, whilst also sharing his insights about the future of working environments. Welcome to the show, Damien.
Thank you, Natalie. Gus, good to be with you guys.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you for donating your time for small and medium business all over the world.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Damien. We are super keen to learn from you today. But before we start, we have two fun questions that we ask all our guests, and we have your two. So we were hoping you can tell us, what was one of your most memorable days of work during your career to date?
Okay, well, it's so hard to come up with one. I might sneak in a second one, Natalie, but look, it takes me back to 2005. I was living in Singapore at the time. I was in a regional role, regional APAC role, Asia Pacific role based out of Singapore. And I did a few days in Bombay, as it was known then, Mumbai now. And I was there to visit all of the customers in the various sales segments that I looked after. So global and professional services, financial services, engineering and manufacturing and technology. At that time, I was looking after those industry verticals. So I was suited and booted. It was 38 degrees in the shade that day. And I couldn't believe it. The Indian colleague who was out to sort of work with me for the day and take me around, we walked out of the office, DHL Express at the time, and there was a motorbike there waiting for us. He opened the sidecar door and we jumped in and proceeded to head into the hustle and bustle of downtown Mumbai. It was an amazing day. We did 9 visits that day. We went from the high street visiting the global banks, talking about all of their logistics needs, out to, the industrial parks where the engineering and manufacturing customers were. We were taking shortcuts through squatters' villages. There was kids playing cricket, nothing but their undies. Some had no clothes on at all, big smiles on their faces. We're dodging cows. It was just unbelievable. We stopped at a local Indian market for lunch. It was just a great day. It's fair to say it didn't end well. That local Indian lunch came back to bite me later that evening. But great memories. And the other one I think I'll share with you, if I can quickly, was 2011. I was in the Middle East at the time, and all of our Middle East leadership team took our respective teams, the high achievers, on a rewards and recognition thank you trip. We didn't know where we were going. We flew into Beirut. We were all hustled onto coaches, and we drove up the mountains. It was a beautiful day overlooking the Mediterranean. And when we arrived up in the mountains in the snow, there was 40 snowmobiles waiting. And we trekked through the mountainside, came across this timber hut, smoke coming out, fire going, barbecue and drinks. And it was just a great day with great people. We came back down the mountain that night, an awards dinner and ceremony. And then to finish off the day, we were backdoor entry into a big nightclub in downtown Beirut. So look, I feel incredibly fortunate, but that are 2 days that stand out for me.
That's an incredible answer. And, we're going to touch more on your broad international experience, because even just these experiences that you've had are just incredible. Thank you for sharing.
Absolute pleasure. And I think you'll see that, in the theme of today, what I love is, obviously we've all got to work hard. We've all got different roles as independent business owners, your audience, or whether you're working for an owner or a large corporate, but recognition and simply saying thank you to your staff goes a long way, and those memories stick with you for a long time, right?
Oh, that's lovely and really nicely said. And what about Damien? I'm keen to know this one. Best piece of advice you have ever received?
Yeah, so one of my prior leaders, Natalie, I looked at him as a mentor. He didn't know it, but I always looked to him for advice. He said to me one day, Damien, don't make decisions on your career based on dollars prior to the age of 40. He said, focus on, the experience, building that knowledge bank and that base foundation of knowledge and life's experiences. And the rest will take care of itself. And look, never a truer word spoken. That stuck with me. It's only in hindsight or retrospect that I realized that was just such great advice. And it really dovetails into my own personal mantra, which is, work hard and just treat people well, right? And so that was a great bit of advice. Doesn't work for everyone, but it certainly worked for me.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Damien, before we go into the questions and having our chat, we're hoping you can tell us, we've learnt a little bit about you, but just a bit more about yourself and a bit about, it seems like you've worked in multiple places, so a bit about your employment history and where you work today.
Yeah, sure. So, and thanks for the opportunity and great to be talking to your audience, guys. So I'm currently presenting to you here from Sydney, where my family and I live, but I was born in country South Australia, grew up on a farm, grew up under a gum tree, and loved that. My mum and dad actively worked the farm, only recently just sold that. All of my schooling was kindergarten to year 12 in our local area school. And I left home after finishing, year 12, went to the city to pursue football for 11 odd years. Loved that. Didn't end up how I would have liked, but it was a great journey, mates for life, and some great lessons learned along the way. And I think my career, if I move on to that now, it's really broken down into a few stages. So I think stage one was really, liner shipping. So I worked for NYK Line, and also a customs brokerage just prior to that. So that was international shipping via ocean. So 20-foot, 40-foot containers, bulk shipping, pure car carriers. I did a couple of years in tourism, and then from there I stepped into, I guess, the air freight and courier express parcel industry with DHL Express, which started my journey to many countries abroad. And then, most recently, coming up 5 years shortly, all with International Workplace Group, who's the market leader in flexible office space and co-working. So, really, I feel blessed for the opportunities that people have given me in my journey, Natalie and Gus. And I think it was only when I was preparing for this and just jotting a few notes down that I reflected, all have been big global corporates, all focusing on international trade, whether it be tourism or shipping or flexible office space. So, been a great journey so far.
And so can I just ask, Damien, when we talk about you've worked internationally, can you just let the audience know? Because I mean, when I was reading it, it seems like you've worked on every continent. So can we just let the audience know what you exactly mean by international?
Yeah, I never planned, I hasten to add. I just threw myself out there after being given opportunities by leaders that gave me that opportunity. But yeah, so if I start from the beginning, bit of time in Malaysia with my now wife. I tried to get work up there with her, but that didn't work out. So I was commuting back and forth. But we then moved to the Philippines, did a bit of time there, then into Singapore and a regional Asia pack role, then off to the Americas, based out of Atlanta, and then out to another regional role in Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa. And I was based initially in our regional office in Bahrain, and then ended up in our Dubai office, and then back to Australia to finish off that journey in 2013, and have ended up in Sydney. So it's amazing. I mean, I only ever signed up to a 1-year contract in the Philippines, and sort of 11, 12 years later, we're still going. So it was good.
Yeah. Damien, when I heard about your career journey, the things that struck me the most, you changed career that is totally different from shipping, transport to now managing workplace spices, totally different complexity. You're talking from India to Beirut to US to Philippines, different food, different culture, different people, different strategy, different regulation. You must be a very adaptable leader. And looking from the lens of a small and medium business where currently, especially, they need to be very adaptable through the pressure, through the changes, whether it's digitally, whether it's through products, innovation. What's your one or two message to all of us to be adaptable? How do, something simple, right? You wake up in different countries, the breakfast tastes different, right? So that's already one thing that people have to be adaptable. What's your message to all of us about being better around adaptability?
Look, I guess I always had that curious nature, right from an early age about what is happening outside of the Australian borders, and always had a fascination with international trade. And so when the opportunity arose, I saw that opportunity and just jumped at it, Gus. So I say to my team now, always be curious. Step outside of your own little comfort zone and world of, I guess, influence. Read the newspapers, chat to others in the industry, get to know the competitors, keep your enemies close. And I think above all, resilience. I refer to it as the W curve. I didn't make that up. It was covered off in a module I did with some international studies. Always be aware of where you are on the W, in particular when you're expatriating or repatriating. When you first move, you're at the top left-hand corner of that W, and everything's exciting, everything's new, everything's spontaneous, new foods, new flavors, new smells, new work colleagues. And at some point, Gus, whether it's day one, week one, quarter one, things get a little tough, and you end up down at the first, bottom of that W. And then over time, it fluctuates and then levels out. And I think it's always important just to step back and reflect as to where you are on that W. And that's really held me in good shape. Try and be aware of where you are on any given day, week, or month, and it helps you get through those hard times.
Fantastic. Thank you.
It is brilliant. And Damien, I've had a look at your LinkedIn profile, and something that really struck me was this active leadership. And what was written there was you are recognized as having a track record of repeated success in all countries in delivering growth through active leadership. Can you explain? It was a great term. So can you explain to us all what you mean by active leadership? And do you think even this style is even more relevant today than what it was before?
So yes, already to the second part of that question. Maybe we'll come back to that. But so yes, Natalie, and look, it didn't all come easy. Clearly, there were certainly ups and downs along the way. But I guess I was fortunate in those middle years of my career where, as leaders, and of course, early on, I was more in a staff role than a line role, so I wasn't managing people. But in particular, when you're operating in, whether it's a matrix environment or a direct environment, you've got direct reports. We can all be leaders in our own way, right? But the term active leadership essentially was, and it was more in the DHL days, how we were measured as leaders, and it really came down to employee engagement. So did your employees understand where we were going and what journey we were on? What was the ultimate goal that we were aiming to achieve? How were we going to get there? What was the employee retention like? Which all comes back to active leadership, right? And actually, our annual performance bonus was based on your active leadership and employee engagement scores, Natalie, right? And I guess some examples, just to bring it to life for your audience, depending on which function you're in, but if you're leading the business, if you're talking about customer service, what are your frontline customer service people experiencing each day? Get on the calls and join those calls with them. If you don't have that technology to allow it, then go and get it. Listen to the voice of the customer. it could be your accounts receivables team. I mean, that's a tough job, calling customers, asking, for money each day. What are they going through? Your inside sales and direct sales team. I used to say to my team, I managed a large inside sales team in the Middle East. So I want the customers to hear your smile, right? And so if you're on those calls and they're doing 30 odd calls a day, that's tough, right? So a day in the life of your team, it's really important, I think, to get alongside your team and understand what they're going through. And I think, that brings to life, your net promoter scores, right? So the voice of the customer, it adds color to that feedback, whether it's good or bad. The good comments, you can relate to what you see in the field with your team, and equally the bad comments, it brings it to life, and it just allows you to act on those because it's present and it's front of mind. So you pick up more, from a day in the field than you will from 3 days in the office. And last week I was able to get down to Melbourne. We're allowed to travel again, and it was just so refreshing. Personally, I struggled a bit, Natalie, during the pandemic. I get my energy from the team and customers and being around people, and so it was just fantastic last week to get down there with some of our community teams, chat to some of our customers, just look at the quality of the product, and you come back, just it really sharpens the focus, where you've got to spend your time. And so, I think, that style of leadership is more relevant today than ever. We've all been working from home for a couple of years. Some countries are still in lockdown and still having to endure that. So where you can get out and about, I'm a big believer in that.
Damien, I want to ask deeper around that. I get very passionate about active leadership topic because it's focused on, as you said, engagement, communication, and appreciation. From even before we start the podcast interview, you're already saying thanking your staff and recognize is key. So you are clearly demonstrating active leadership. The number one question that I want to ask you is, leaders come with a different capability. They might want to do an active leadership by talking to their staff, sitting down beside them, as you say, with the customer service and making the phone call, listening to the feedback. How do you teach or educate your second level leaders to make sure that their action as an active leaders do not come across as a micromanage leaders? Because when people with authority coming down actively, we also, depending on the person, can create nervousness on the ground. What's your view on that?
Yeah, no, well said. Even my trip down to Melbourne last week, Gus, it's been a couple of years or 18 months broadly, and it's why is he coming? What's he up to? What's he looking at? And so it's number one, it's, informing the team of why you're coming, a clear agenda, and ultimately I look forward to seeing everyone. But I think to your point in the question, once you start it, it's about being consistent. And it's inherently part of a culture. If you only do it, now and then you do it once in Q4, or, you're going to do it just when your CEO is coming down to visit your country, your team smell that, and it's not genuine, right? And so, I continually myself have to remind myself, have I spent enough time in the field? And if I found out there's new staff members that have joined, I haven't met them for some time, it's a reminder that I haven't done my job well enough. So I think just consistency in making time in your diary. And then for your own direct reports, Gus, to your point, it's, in your one-on-ones that you should be doing regularly, it's just reminding them, when were you last here? Have you done this? Have you caught up with your team? Are you spending time in the field? Nothing more, nothing less. You don't need to overcook it. It's just simply asking the question and reminding them.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Damien, I just want to go back to something that you said in your previous answer, which I think is so great. And, it's not expensive to do, but you mentioned that, when you're on the phone, make sure the customer or whoever it is, the potential client or whoever, can hear your smile. And, I think that's such a good message for all business owners listening, whether small, medium, large. Something as simple as being able to hear your smile can make or break the conversation you're having, if I'm correct. Like, whether it's the toughest conversation, just having that smile heard works wonders.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, how many, telephone calls do we all receive from organizations canvassing us for their business, right? So, it's tough. And, I like to talk about the 1%ers. If you can add that little 1% to what you're doing and create that delta or that differential between yourselves and the competitors, right, then you stand a far higher chance of converting those inquiries or those deals, and obviously hitting your numbers. So, or having happier customers, or collecting the money if you're in accounts receivable, or whatever it may be. So, it is challenging though, Natalie, and that's why I say, back to the inside sales example I gave. The team were making 30 odd calls a day, and we asked them to split it up between existing customers, new customers, and or retention, so cross-selling and upselling, right? So really getting targeted with those calls. And that's tough, sitting there all day. And so, we put a nice big massage and vibrating chair in that room to allow them to have those 5 minutes of recharge time. We allow them to paint their offices, put their own music on, whatever created that environment for success. It really genuinely worked. But you've got to keep working at it. I have the view that you should never think you've arrived at the train station, because you can become lazy and complacency sneaks in, right? So, yeah.
It's brilliant. Thank you. And I want to touch on this high-performing team, because we have promised our audience that we're going to learn from you about, creating this high-performing team. In your opinion, what does a high-performing team actually look like?
Well, there's many answers to that, but I think if I simplify it, respect for each other, a level of honesty within a team. It's okay. There's a culture where you can challenge each other, in the pursuit of being successful. You're driven. You've got to have that fire in the belly, and that flame is ideally got to be lit and blowing at all times. You got to challenge each other, be focused on the outcome. That comes back to, leadership traits and simplifying the journey and ultimately the outcome of where you're heading as a team. And high performing teams, Natalie, typically just simply find a way to get it done, right? That there's always going to be adversity. There's going to be hurdles, pandemics, whatever it may be, arise. Hopefully we don't have any more of them. But that commitment as a team and that understanding, keeping each other accountable, I think is really important. And I made this comment just to close on that in the last question. I think that inherent belief that you're always on the journey, the train is always moving, and the train station is always just beyond reach. That keeps you hungry. I think it keeps you curious. Of course, you've got to celebrate successes along the way, because this is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And I have seen that many times with individuals. They have their first taste of success. They think they've arrived, and then that complacency steps in. And that's where leaders have to recognize that and just help them realize that they've done a great job. They've dropped off a little bit, and it's time to rev up again. So, I hope that helps the audience.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Damien, I want to ask also about the high performance team. So if you have to choose, so correct me if I'm not taking your message before correctly. What you're saying is high performance team for you have to be a value-based team, a team that work on honesty, ability to challenge each other, team that have a mentality of job done instead of trying to find 1,000 excuses of why job not done.
Yeah.
A team that can actually enjoy the journey because they understand it's an infinite mindset business, because you will never get there, because business have to run forever if we can. If you have to choose between a team, let's just make it a team of 10 of a very highly performing person, but not necessarily value based as you say, but they individually very, very strong, to a second class performing individual. So I'm not talking bad, but they're definitely not the tallest, the biggest, the one that can smash the ball all the time. But the team itself work together, accommodate each other, equip each other. Which one you pick? Maybe my question is not clear, but I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no, it is clear. Let me answer it this way. I do a lot of interviews, Gus, and always want to be there. And clearly, I don't try and own that process. I want the leaders to own that process and ultimately pick their team. But I will always take someone that has that desire and hunger in their belly over skill set. Skills, knowledge can be learned, can be shaped, can be formed. Depending on the subject knowledge, of course, but I will always take someone that has that drive and hunger to succeed over someone that's got the knowledge, but it's a little bit cavalier and shows some of those lazy tendencies. So that's the way I would answer that. Because that will stand you in good stead when times get tough. And you stay long enough in a role, it's those people that can punch through that and continue to stay focused and deliver rather than lose sight of the end goal that you want on your team.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. We as a business within Peerlight experienced that clearly for the past 5 years. We, as a 75 years old business, there's no question we have a high performing individuals. But then because of the business going through a lot of challenges, a lot of people left. And when we replace them, we replace the people with the more cohesive team that have a lot of hunger. And the impact to the business is multiple because the ability of people helping each other. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. No, I love it.
Can you ever, this is just a question to both of you, can you ever have a team of too many hungry people? Does you always have to strike a balance?
Whoa, good question, Natalie. I don't think you can have too many.
Yeah, just curiosity.
I don't think you can have too many hungry people at all. I just think it's you get the right people on the right seat on the bus. You communicate well where you're heading on that journey, and then you let them go for it. And of course, you revisit that weekly, monthly, quarterly. You continue to shape it. Essentially, it's called quintiling. How have you gone this month? You nailed these few KPIs. You've fallen away here. Let's move them back up. Give those some focus. So, it's that continual evolution of getting the best performance out of your team. Really easy to say, much harder to execute. I constantly get it wrong, but it's knowing when you've got it wrong and what you've got to do to get that right again. So, but it's great. I love it.
I just get something very important here. We're talking to a country head of an international company that just openly on live to air saying, I constantly do it wrong as well. Such a humility values that I actually love, because once again, if you in the destination, then you finish. But obviously you are hungry for learning, you're hungry for improvement, because you just say it openly. Mind you, this is this podcast available in every platform all over the world, and you just say it, I constantly do it wrong. I love that, Damien.
Yeah, well, you've got to own it, right? There's no hiding.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's what builds that honesty and trust with the team, right? When you can put your hand up and say, guys, I'm so sorry, you were right. But I think the key is recognizing quickly. So fail fast, right? Fail fast, adjust, acknowledge it, learn from it, and then move on.
And that's important for small and medium business, because the problem that we found after we're doing this podcast for 1 year and we talk to a lot of small and medium business, the ability to get feedback is limited, because as a small business they might only have 2, 3, 4, 5. As a contractor they might only have 5 tradesmen working for them, and the ability to listen to feedback and honestly own it have to be very strong, because if they keep saying to themselves, "Nah, I can't take that feedback because you're just a tradesman," then who do you get the feedback from then? So can you just repeat again? Fail fast.
Fail fast.
Fail fast.
Yeah. Fail fast. Learn from
I'll never forget it.
Recognize where you went wrong, and then adjust and tweak and go down that new path based on where you think you need to go.
You know, sometimes I think, especially as business owners, it's harder said than done to fail fast, because you kind of lingo. If you receive bad feedback, for example, it could haunt you all day. And, you know, to the moment, you know, to the dinner time when you have that glass of wine or whatever it is, it's like, oh, that morning conversations, you know, that I had has kind of, I've carried across with me all day. So the ability to fail fast, those two, it's just so really, really important for all business owners to really take on board. It's great.
And clearly it's harder. The bigger the business, the more time and dollars invested, the more people you have on board. You know, that takes courage to recognize and realize that you do need to change direction. So, you know, I feel fortunate. I've worked for some great leaders in the past and today that recognize that, and we learn from them, right? And so I aim to pass that on to my team as well. So there's no right recipe, but I think it's important that you recognize quickly when you're heading down the wrong road.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And what about, Damien, we've touched on high performing team. What about creating a winning culture? What does a winning culture look like to you? I'm assuming they go hand in hand, a high-performing team, winning culture.
Yeah, so yes, I think simply put, if you walk into, you know, a team that's in a separate state or in a separate country or in a separate function, and you simply ask that team member, regardless of their function, you know, what is the ultimate goal? What journey are we on as a business? You know, give it to me in 30 seconds, and they can articulate that. Then I think you're on the right path, right? If your team, if you ask 5 team members, you know, where are we going? What's our end goal? And you get 5 different answers. As a leader, you probably got to go back pretty quickly and reflect on where you've gone wrong, and that you've got to come back and get a bit of consistency around the bus that you're on and where you're driving to. And you know, just measure it based on what works for you or your particular function. If you're a functional leader, or if you're a country leader, or a group CEO. I'll leave it at that, Natalie.
Yeah, no, it's great. And what about, Damien, for a new business who's starting up and they want to create this winning culture, do you have any tips that you can give them to, like, they're just starting out, they don't have to change an existing culture, they're like brand new and they're like, I just want to start off with a big bang. Anything specifically that you think that they need to do from get go?
Well, depending on the size of the business, and no particular, I'd say know your people, know your customers, know your numbers. I think the other thing I'd say, maybe 3 points: people, right? Get the people piece right. There's a great saying, you know, how can you soar the eagles when you're surrounded by turkeys, right? So you need the right people around you. Hire people that are better than yourself in their respective areas of discipline, that are just going to get it done. Communicate with them the journey and then get out of their way. Just let them do what they do best. So number 1's people, I'd say. Number 2 is process. Make sure, you know, you develop rituals in your day-to-day, your weekly, your quarterly, I guess, working environment. So you're continually checking in, and your people know you're going to check in, and then ultimately measure the performance and ritualize it. You know, where do you want to end up? Ultimately, you're going to make a start somewhere, but like eating an elephant, I guess, one mouthful at a time. But ultimately, just enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey and have fun.
If people, I love it. You know, you never mention people once. You always say people. You just about to make Natalie and I want to apply job within your organization, because you clearly love people, and that's something fantastic. If you have to pick the 3 attributes of a great people, regardless the role. So I'm not talking about salespeople. I'm not talking about finance team. Just like the first thing that you look at for the small and medium business to hire great talent outside their responsibility. Of course, if they do finance and they do marketing, there is a hard skill they need to have. What are the three attributes that you're looking for from them?
Yeah, so I have a very distinct and uniformed interview style, Gus, and I always like to start every interview that I do. Maybe a few tips for those that might want to apply in the future, but if I'm interviewing you, but I always say, I've got your resume here, I've read it, add some color to it. Tell me about yourself, whatever you're willing to share personally, and then tell me about your professional career, and start from, back whenever you're willing to and come through to present day. And what I'm looking for is, where were their areas of, adversity? How did they punch through that? What was their background, their upbringing like, which has essentially formed them into the person they are today? And again, in that first question, I'm not looking for specific skills for the particular role. I'm just looking for someone that talks openly and honestly about their journey, their ups, their downs, how they conquered them. So just the person themselves, team player, absolutely. So this is in no particular order. And then just their hunger to succeed.
Correct.
Yeah, I can't even remember, Gus. We had a chat. It was on one of our episodes, and someone was discussing, when they're doing interviews as well. It was a great leader, and I don't remember who it was exactly, but they were saying they don't even look at the name, the age, the background, the gender. They get rid of all of that. And exactly what you said, they've got the resume, but then they want the color added to this person that they know nothing about. So it just kind of brought that to life.
Yeah.
A really interesting way.
And of course, Natalie, you've got to, I'm a massive believer in diversity, and it's a hot topic globally at the moment, diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we just focus on diversity, you need diversity in your teams. You need different thoughts and views. You want to debate topics, and ultimately healthy teams that debate topics end up with the right answer and the right outcome. I think back to the team I managed in the Middle East. I had 9 direct reports, and every one of those reports was from a different country. Part of that was by design. Part of it was, a little bit of fortuitous luck. I mean, Dubai is a real melting pot of cultures. But if you don't have that on your team, for your listeners out there, actively go and find diversity. You'll be a much better business for it.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. Great lesson, definitely. And Damien, we want to touch on the future of working environments.
Whoa.
It's something that I think you can give us a lot of information about and business insights. So we know that COVID-19 itself has introduced this term hybrid work. Can you, before we go into it, just so everyone knows what we're talking about, can you first explain what this new term, I did look it up. It's not in the Macquarie Dictionary yet, but I'm sure it will be. Can you just let us know what hybrid work actually means so our listeners know what we're going to be talking about?
I got to correct you there, Natalie. You should have looked up the Oxford Dictionary. It was added
in there, is it? See,
hybrid working was added in December 21 to the Oxford Dictionary. So our founder Mark Dixon and our group CEO still today, he loves it because he does a lot of keynotes, talks to industry at future work summits, etc. He doesn't have to explain that as much now. What is hybrid working? But look, simply put, it's a little bit of working at, say, your corporate headquarters. It's a little bit of work from home, work near home, or essentially work from anywhere. The new world of work is what it talks about when you say hybrid working.
Okay, perfect. And if Macquarie Dictionary is listening, they should take note of that, because as editors, we edit according to the Macquarie Dictionary and we're a little bit behind. So noted. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. So do you think, Damien, that hybrid work was always going to happen? Or do you perhaps think that our current, what's happened in the past year or two has actually accelerated both the acceptance and the speed of how quickly hybrid work has become something, and being accepted in the Oxford Dictionary, it means it actually exists. Do you think that has facilitated the speed?
Yeah, so a couple of comments. Look, hybrid working has been coming from a long time. So our business, Mark Dixon founded our business sort of 32 odd years ago. He was essentially the founder of the flex working sector, right? And that's been running at a compounded annual growth rate, in healthy numbers. In recent years, in double-digit numbers. Pandemic aside, which was a little challenging for the sector, but it's coming back fast now. But what was driving that move to hybrid working essentially is digitalization. What we're doing now, you've got audience members dialing in here in Australia and around the world. Technology advancements are allowing us to work differently. And so, yes, there's a lot more talk about it since the pandemic arrived. And essentially the pandemic, when it arrived, it was like there was a collective sigh from millions of workers around the world saying, finally, I can justify working from home more than going into the corporate headquarters, right? I mean, it almost seems ludicrous to wake up in the morning, pack up your laptop, put it in your backpack, commute in for an hour, open it up, work for 8 hours, 9 hours, pack it up, and then commute home again every day. And so, that's what's driving that change. Yes, it's here to stay. Absolutely. I mean, we've just completed, and in some countries, it's still ongoing. Unfortunately, if you look at North Asia at the moment, it's still in lockdown in some countries. So it has been the world's largest flexible working experiment. And because it's gone on for 2 years, we've seen suburbs thrive, local communities thrive. That live, work, play closer to home. We recently commissioned a white paper called the 15-Minute City. And we're certainly not saying the CBD is dead, far from it, Natalie. It's just the CBDs, I think, of the future are going to look a little different. They're going to have to be, reinvented. There'll be a lot of placemaking going on, maybe some office assets converted into residential apartments or living. But we see huge growth in the suburbs, regional towns and cities. And fun fact for you, we've got a large presence in Australia in the CBD and in the suburbs, and that's the same globally. We saw our suburban centres perform 20% better in terms of physical occupancy during the pandemic. And that was simply because people were uncertain and uneasy about commuting in on, buses and trains and ferries, but they were happy to drop the kids at school or go to the gym closer to home and then drive to their suburban centre, grab a coffee, have a brief chat to someone, and then go in and close their door. So, yeah, really interesting trends. I mean, another fact I'll share with your listeners, roughly 3.5% of real estate in the CBDs globally is taken up by the flex office sector, so our sector. So IWG and other companies operating in this space. Depending on which research paper or report you read, by the time we get to 2020 and 2030, some of the experts say that'll be 30% of the total available commercial real estate will be taken up by the flex sector. So it's really interesting. The industry is being disrupted. Real estate consumption is changing. There's absolutely a move to outsourcing now, more on-demand, subscription-based workspace as a service, as opposed to signing up to 10-year leases and with 3 to 4% indexation, and then they're set and forget. Because there's a lot of wastage at the moment, right? But hopefully that helps your audience understand some of those trends that are driving that.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question, Damien? When obviously your organization provides solutions for hybrid working solutions. Is this only for big company? What happens if I'm a small interior designers with only 3 staff? Or can I actually enjoy the benefit of solution from your organization? Because right now 3 of my team working from home, and my own home is so small that I can't even meet with them. I'm sick of meeting at the same cafe because we can't really talk. So is your organization only for big company with 1,000 staff that want to cut the lease from 10-year lease? So we go with you, or you actually provide solution for small business like ours?
Yeah, great question, Gus. So if you go back historically, and I remember discussing this at one of the IWG, leadership conferences, Mark and Fatima, our head of commercial at the time, was presenting it. So if you look at a simple pie chart at that time, there was sort of 80-20 split, 80% SME, 20% sort of corporate or enterprise customers. And we could see that changing quickly, that large corporates were now looking at, hybrid working trends. This is about now employee retention and attraction, Gus, right? So in the last few years, we've seen large corporates, and it's been coming for some time, but more and more inquiries from large corporates incorporating flexible working as part of their broader real estate strategy. And I'll give you an example. So in 2021, we're still in the height of the pandemic. This is a global number, not an Australian number, but we sold over 2 million memberships. And the majority of those were sold to large corporates. And that goes back to my point about, the consumption of real estate was changing. That was about large corporates looking at their people and saying, how do we support them during this time? They're uncomfortable coming in. And so scrubbing their HR data across our network and saying, okay, let's provide our employees memberships and they can go and work at a professional centre closer to home. And so we certainly see that continuing. So what I'm talking about there is on demand or a subscription based or locking in for an office, for 3 months or 12 months or 18 months. So essentially it's risk mitigation, but more and more at the table now, Gus, we're seeing heads of HR, heads of people and culture, rather than heads of procurement or heads of real estate, or they're both there, because this really is a people play and not a property play. And it is about finding the right people, or once you've got them, keeping the right people. So, Gen Z, as we recently had a look at that, they said they would not, 70% of them said they would not consider a role if it didn't, include some form of hybrid working. So, I think it's important, if you're a business owner out there, do consider it. Don't say that it's my way or the highway. Your people are looking for that.
And I think it's a challenge for any business, including mine, where we know that the world changing so fast, whether it's through digital improvement, whether it's through, sustainability lens, where building required a lot of improvement and it's expensive. And I think the solution of organization like you bring to the table is actually can save a lot of money and also provide solution for businesses to make the people happy, because I'm sure you will focus on improving your building asset as well, depending on the trend. If we hire, if we lease a building for 10 years, we actually sitting at the same office for 10 years with no improvement.
Yeah. And there's even before the pandemic, Gus, office utilization at best was around 70% when you take into account people on leave or sick leave or traveling. Today, it's around here in Australia, 35%. So there's a lot of waste there, right? And, it's sitting on the balance sheet, you're paying for that. So, I also appreciate, I feel sorry for those that signed a 10-year lease just prior to the pandemic, right? So there's a lot of sublease space available, but I think it's just important to recognize it. And you're right. I'll give you a quick story. I met with our media agency yesterday. We walked into the room and there was someone on the screen, and our media and PR agency said, Damien, would like you to meet Grace. She's your new senior account manager. And she was dialing in from Yeppoon, which is 40 minutes out of Rockhampton up in northwest Queensland. And I just said, how did that come about? And they just said, well, technology now allows us to find the best people. If they're in similar time zones, we still all work effectively. And Grace just travels down every 2 months for our team meetings. But apart from that, she's working up there and we just engage through mediums like this. So, it's certainly changing fast. And I think it's here to stay.
And Damien, for all those listeners out there or business owners, whoever's listening in today or will listen in the future, they're struggling to accept this as the new way of working, this hybrid work. Do you have any advice for them? If they think you need to come into the office every day, there's this, and we need to have this entire building. What advice would you have for them? Because you can see what has happened in just this short amount of time. Is there any message that you have for them?
Yeah, look, I think, acknowledge it, that there is no turning back. And that snowball is clearly gathering momentum, and there's no stopping it now. Hybrid is here to stay. Companies of all sizes are making the shift to hybrid. But that, and I'm not necessarily saying it's all with the flex sector. It's, as I said earlier, from the corporate headquarters or work from home, work near home, and of course, we're certainly part of that solution. One observation we've made is that some are acting now, others are waiting for leases to expire, to your point, Gus. And I think it's important that even while you're waiting, for leases to expire, it is all about the people, which takes us back to the earlier part of the conversation. And what is the cost of acquiring great people? Or more importantly, if you lost them, what is the cost of losing your best people, right? And so, I think to acknowledge that you need some form of hybrid work policy to not only attract but retain your best employees, and to ensure, you have a positive impact on the business. And ultimately, you've got to ask your question, is it going to impact our customers? I think most corporations have shown, and employees have shown during the pandemic, that they haven't fallen over. They've been pretty productive. So it's certainly here to stay. And I just say embrace it. We've had some discussions with many. Talking to our head of enterprise sales globally, Natalie, he made a comment to me recently that some of these discussions they've had ongoing now for 18 months, and still for some organizations they have made no decision. Wow. And they keep trying to move the goalposts or adjust. I get that, but I would also say, we're trying to say, look, just do something, show your people that you're doing something, you care about them, and you recognize the new way of working. And ultimately, if you get that right, you got back to our earlier point, happy and engaged employees typically leads to happy customers, higher NPS scores, healthy margins and profit, happy business owners and shareholders, right? So
it's always come back to that.
Yeah.
It does. And I mean, I've spoken to people, and they've even said not only are they still delivering, but they are even more productive. So there's that benefit as well. People are actually enjoying it, so they're wanting to give more. So it's really interesting.
I think the challenge. Oh, sorry, you go, Natalie.
No, I'll let you finish.
I was just going to say, I think the challenge though is, if you think about the Gen Zers, and for your audience, that they're between 10 and 25 years of age at the moment. A lot of them have only ever worked in the last 2 years in this environment, right? And so whilst they're demanding a hybrid policy, you've also got to recognize, how do you get them back in to the office? Culture is caught, it's not taught. And so as leaders, we've got to acknowledge that, the up and coming leaders of your business, they don't learn through osmosis. So we've got to find that balance and motivate them. You've got to earn that commute to get them back into the office. So, and that's why we're really focused, on the suburbs and the regional towns and cities, both direct and through our partners that want to set up a co-working business. We're here to help them and tap into this runway of growth.
Brilliant. Damien, we could speak to you for another whole hour, and we're out of time. So Gus, I'm going to hand over to you to wrap up.
No problem. Damien, first, I just want to, on behalf of Natalie and I and Leader Talk, we just want to say thank you for your time. You are a very, very insightful leader. I love when we interview people and we have this chat. The leader that come to our program is start with people. And when we talk to you, you don't mention people once. You say people, people, people. And I think this is very important for the audience, because businesses and customer only can be serviced through people, right? And we are people. Even if it's a one-person business, we are people itself. So these are the key things that I took from you. Thanking your staff and recognize them is key for success. Don't make your decision on your career based on money. Instead, base it on the knowledge and experience. Work hard and treat people well. You want to be adaptable? Then be curious. Because when you're curious, the changes actually become exciting. Active leadership focus on engagement, communication, and appreciation. To do it well, we need to be transparent and be consistent in making the time to engage with your people. High performance team is a value-based team. Honesty, ability to challenge each other, and then focus on job done mentality and support these values. You also mentioned create the culture where you always in the journey, never arrive in the train stop. You can see it, but you're never there. So we always curious and we always enjoying the journey. Fail fast and learn from it and adjust and tweak to move forward. Winning culture is about knowing your people, knowing your customer, and knowing your numbers, backed up by strong focus on people, process, ritual, and recognition of performance. Damien, thank you so much. I think we enjoyed this chat. We can do a 3 hours discussion if time is not limited,
Easy.
but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you to both of you for the opportunity, and to your listeners, very well, and all the best for the rest of the year. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Damien. And thank you everyone for tuning in. For more information on Leader Talk and for some great resources to help your business grow, check out brainiac.com.au. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.